Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your home for the biggest stories shaping the US and the world. I'm Cary, Johnston, live from the Firstpost studios. Our top story on the show today. 3 countries and a 48-hour window that could change everything. Is the war in Ukraine finally moving off the battlefield? Also on the program, immigration officers detain a 5-year-old in Minnesota. But does Vice President Vance's chilling response expose how extreme the crackdown has become? What future for US-Canada relations as the American president and Canadian PM wage an ever more heated war of words? And a sitting US president questions term limits out loud. Is America's Constitution about to face its biggest test yet? Diplomacy went into overdrive as the World Economic Forum at Davos entered its 5th and final day. Behind the scenes, preparations began for something that has not happened since 2022. Ukraine, Russia and the United States are preparing for a trilateral meeting on neutral ground in a bid to end the war in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed it almost casually on the sidelines of the summit.
Yes, they waited for our meeting with President Trump. And now they will go, and my team will meet American team, and I think that it will be the first trilateral meeting in Emirates. It will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Yes, it will be 2 days meetings in Emirates. I hope that Emirates know about it.
Russia has now confirmed the plan. The meeting is expected to take place in Abu Dhabi today, with the Kremlin saying discussions will focus on security issues. Moscow's delegation will be led by Admiral Igor Kostyukov, the powerful chief of Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU. The Kremlin says there will also be a separate US-Russia meeting led by Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev and US envoy Steve Witkoff. Well, the choice of Abu Dhabi is not accidental. The UAE has carefully positioned itself as neutral territory, a place where rivals can talk without the optics of victory or defeat. The trilateral push follows another face-to-face between Zelensky and Donald Trump in Davos yesterday. This was their second meeting since December, following a session at Mar-a-Lago. Trump described the conversation as very good, but cautioned that negotiations remain an ongoing process.
Did something change that makes you think that Putin and Zelensky now are serious about it?
I'm not making any predictions. There are no changes. I think that President Putin would like to make a deal. I think that President Zelensky would like to make a deal.
Well, after the meeting, Zelensky echoed the optimism, but with a degree of restraint.
I think that our teams worked well and come, like I think this last mile, which is very difficult, which during any dialogue with any president, I have to defend the interests of my country. That's why the dialogue is, maybe it's not simple, but today it was positive.
Zelensky also revealed something significant. He said Ukraine had finalized the terms of security guarantees and that a deal is almost ready on post-war economic recovery. The Ukrainian president also made the case for Putin to face international prosecution, and he criticized Europe for, in his view, not learning from past inaction.
Everyone remembers the great American film Groundhog Day with Bill Murray and Andy McDowell. Yes, but no one would want to live like that. Repeating the same thing for weeks, months, and of course for years. And yet, that's exactly how we live now. And it's our life. And every forum like this one proves it. Just last year, here in Davos, I ended my speech with the words, Europe needs to know how to defend itself. A year has passed and nothing has changed.
We are still in a situation where I must say the same words, but why? The answer is not just about the threats that exist or may appear. Each year brings something new for Europe and for the world.
While Davos buzzed with side conversations and political noise, diplomacy was also taking place further east. Late last night, Vladimir Putin met Trump's envoys at the Kremlin, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and senior White House advisor Josh Grunbaum. Well, those talks stretched around 3 hours past midnight. The Kremlin described them as substantive, constructive, and very frank. Officials said Putin expressed a sincere interest in a diplomatic solution, but with a condition. Until an agreement is reached, Russia will continue pursuing the objectives of what it calls its special military operation, especially on the battlefield, where it claims to hold the upper hand. Russia is also demanding the Donbass from Ukraine, saying that it would not pull out from the region. The United States has been speaking separately to Russia, Ukraine, and European allies for months now. And while draft plans exist and promises have been made, no deal has been signed. So at the moment, everyone has been waiting for is approaching. 3 sides, 1 table, and a neutral ground. The world will be watching what happens in Abu Dhabi. Well, for more on this, we have with us Gilbert Doctorow, who's an international relations and Russian affairs expert, joining us live now from Brussels. Welcome to the program. Could this be, in your view, finally a turning point, or is the issue of territory likely to torpedo any possible peace deal?
On the contrary, the issue of territory might be the key to solving the problem. This morning, the information that I had was precisely what you have just set out, that this was going to be technical discussions. And in that regard, the head of the Russian delegation, the admiral who is in charge of military intelligence, was going to be there to deal with issues of security. However, this afternoon, the Russian newspaper Vedomosti gave some additional information which is very relevant to our discussion. Apparently, there is in parallel a discussion going on in Abu Dhabi about precisely territorial concessions. And the interesting, really remarkable new element is that apparently the Americans have raised the issue of providing or assuring $800 billion in recovery money to Ukraine should Kiev agree to give up ownership of the Donbass. Well, that changes the whole equation completely. For me, it's a curiosity, because I personally had suggested a year ago that if the Russian frozen funds now in Europe and in Europe here were to be donated to Ukraine, or to be given to Ukraine as compensation for the territory that we're now talking about, Donbass, in a real estate deal, then the war would end. And it looks like something similar to that is now being proposed by Team Trump. I added, why Davos and how do these things fit together? Well, Davos is definitely involved. The director of Davos, Mr. Fink, who is also the CEO of BlackRock, is said to be the man who is in charge, would be placed in charge of raising and distributing the $800 billion in recovery money to Ukraine.
Okay, so forgive me, I'm just going to jump in there if I may. Forgive me. I mean, Ukraine is especially concerned, isn't it, about security after any kind of peace is reached. Would that likely to involve boots on the ground, as it were, from other nations?
Well, here exactly is your point you were raising a moment ago, of where's the sticking point. It's not over territory. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Ukraine, under a settlement, would give up claims to all of Donbass. Now, what does that mean? We're speaking about they're doing precisely what the Russians have wanted since June of 2024, when Mr. Putin set out unequivocally his terms, that peace negotiations would begin when the Ukrainians began withdrawing from that part of Donbass that they don't presently hold and that is in Russian possession. That is in Ukrainian possession, but the Russians haven't yet taken. Now, the issue of boots on the ground is precisely the open issue for a settlement. it is not clear whose boots the United States is offering Ukraine to provide so that Ukraine would feel secure after concluding this peace. The Russians, of course, flatly refuse to entertain the notion of European and least of all NATO troops being dispatched to Ukraine. That is out of play. So the sticking point in concluding this deal will be less likely to be territory and more likely to be security guarantees.
Right. Now, you mentioned Russia there. I mean, Russia says its concerns have never been fully addressed in terms of NATO expansion towards its borders. How can those issues be resolved?
Well, that's another set of negotiations. I find it hard to imagine that the Russians will conclude a peace treaty with Ukraine without also having well in hand discussions with Europe and NATO over the future realignment or revision of security architecture in Europe. After all, Russia went to war not just because of the problems with Ukraine, but because of the bigger issue of it being excluded from Europe's security or Europe's activities to look after its own Europe's security were always made at the expense of Russian security. So that issue will not go away, and I don't think any concrete agreement on Ukraine will be signed off by the parties without substantial progress on that issue, bigger issue of the future of European security.
Gilbert Doctorow, thank you very much indeed for joining us today on First Post America. In the United States, Donald Trump's immigration crackdown is widening, and this time it has reached a 5-year-old child. On Tuesday, federal agents detained a Minnesota preschooler after surrounding his family's car in their own driveway. The boy, Liam Conejo Ramos, and his father, Adrian Alexander Conejo Arias, had just returned home from school. Then came the moment that has caused national outrage. According to the school superintendent, an officer took Liam out of the car, walked him to his front door and told him to knock to see if anyone else was inside. The school official described it as using a 5-year-old as bait. Then another adult at the home begged officers not to detain the child, but that request was denied.
I just took videos and were crying and kept saying, wait, wait, wait. I kept saying, stop, wait. He can go with us. He can go with the teachers. And then they took him over to the car and he was just standing there. And then they quickly put him in the back seat and drove away.
When Liam's older brother returned from school, 20 minutes later, both his father and little brother were gone. By that evening, Liam and his father had been transferred to the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, a facility that houses migrant families. The family's lawyer says both entered the United States legally in 2024 and applied for asylum at an official port of entry.
So they did everything right when they came in. They were just trying to secure safety and persecution for their family from their home country. But ICE didn't care about the fact that they had those pending claims and then just arrested them.
However, federal officials dispute that version. The Department of Homeland Security says Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, was carrying out a targeted operation against the child's father, whom it describes as being in the country illegally. They claim his father ran from agents and left the child behind. Officers, it says, stayed with the boy for his safety and later detained him after his father asked that his son remain with him. They also denied the claim that Liam was used as bait. Well, Liam is now one of 4 students from the same Minnesota school district to be taken by ICE in recent weeks. A 17-year-old was detained while heading to school. A 10-year-old was arrested with her mother on the way to a school class. And another teenage girl and her mother were taken from their apartment. School officials say ICE vehicles have even been seen entering school property. Well, because of this, families are now keeping children at home, and fear is spreading through classrooms.
Our schools and communities must be safe places for children and families to thrive. And we need a diplomatic pathway out of this situation. And we are seeking a peaceful resolution, and we need your help. Because at the end of the day, we have whistles and they have guns.
Well, the case has also reached Washington. Vice President JD Vance defended the operation during a visit to Minneapolis, saying agents were enforcing the law.
And I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy, and I think to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien, and then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America?
The civil rights groups and local leaders say the government has crossed a line. Minneapolis has become the center of one of the largest immigration crackdowns in the country, with nearly 3,000 federal agents now operating in Minnesota. Protests have erupted. Schools are on edge. And at the center of it all is a little boy who should be in a classroom, not a detention camp. Liam's classmates are asking where he went. His teachers say the room feels empty without him. And as this operation continues to expand, one question is growing louder by the day. If this can happen to a 5-year-old, then who else can feel really safe? Well, still to come on the program, some people think he's out of this world. But what does tech boss Elon Musk say about the possibility of aliens from outer space? But first, US-Canada relations are back in the spotlight and back under strain. President Donald Trump has scrapped Canada's invitation to his Board of Peace after accusing Ottawa of being ungrateful. The move has reignited questions about how real Prime Minister Carney's apparent thaw with Donald Trump ever was. Trump's withdrawal of the invitation follows his sharp remarks on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Speaking before a global audience, the US president accused Canada of failing to show sufficient gratitude for its close relationship with the US. The comments marked a notable escalation in tone, framing the bilateral relationship as transactional rather than partnership-based.
Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
Well, Trump's comments have drawn an unusually firm response from Ottawa. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney pushed back against his remarks.
Canada and the United States have built a remarkable partnership in the economy, in security, and in rich cultural exchange. But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
Well, the exchange also underscores how quickly hopes of a bilateral reset have faded. When Carney was elected Prime Minister last year, relations with Washington appear to have steadied after a bitter period under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trump often derided Trudeau as the governor of America's so-called 51st state, a line that has struck a nerve in Canada and deepened diplomatic friction. Well, faced with an increasingly assertive Washington, Trudeau responded by urging Canadians to reduce dependence on the US and build economic self-sufficiency.
I can confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. So Canadians should continue to buy Canadian, continue to stand up for each other.
Carney, by contrast, entered office promising a more conciliatory approach aimed at dialing down the temperature and refocusing on economic stability and security cooperation. Back in October, Trump praised him in a sharp contrast from the current war of words between the two leaders.
Great Prime Minister. I mean, he could represent me anytime. I will tell you, I'm not saying that because he's here. No, he is a very strong, very good leader. He's a nice man.
Well, for US-Canada relations, the Board of Peace withdrawal sends a clear message. Any attempts at a bilateral reset will be subject to the transactional style that has come to define Donald Trump's foreign policy. Now, America has a rule which is written into the Constitution and has existed as a tradition since 1796. A president only gets 2 terms, and then someone else takes the reins of power. The only exception was the Great Depression and World War II. But now, President Donald Trump does not seem ready to accept either tradition or the Constitution. He has repeatedly floated the idea of seeking a third term. But yesterday he went even further, questioning whether he should try for a fourth term, insisting that he says his approval ratings are at record highs. Well, Trump is currently serving his second term in the White House. So even if he were allowed to run again and won, it would be his third. So after Trump posted his idea of a number 4 on Truth Social, users on X were left scratching their heads. When did he have a third term? Well, you might think this was just a classic Trump-style mix-up for a president who is infamous for pronouncing Azerbaijan as Azerbaijan and for confusing Greenland with Iceland. But this time it seemed deliberate. Trump has his own logic for this. Last year, he said that the 2020 election that he lost to Joe Biden was totally rigged and has repeatedly pushed conspiracy theories about the result being stolen from him. So, in his mind, the third term would actually be his fourth. And Trump's wish to remain in office after his current term ends is not new. Back in October, he told reporters he would love to run again.
I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers.
So you're not ruling out a third term?
Am I not ruling it out? You'll have to tell me. All I can tell you is that we have a great group of people, which they don't.
And then came the merchandise. The Trump Organization has started selling hats that say Trump 2028. In November last year, Trump posted an AI-generated image of himself signaling another term in office. And then here's the paradox. Trump says he's seeing record support, but the numbers say otherwise. According to recent polls, only 4 in 10 Americans approve of his performance. 56% disapprove of how he's handling the economy, immigration, governance, and the cost of living. Nearly half of Americans believe the country is worse off than it was a year ago. And less than 1/3 think it's doing better. So, this is where America stands today. A sitting president is questioning term limits, testing institutions, and daring the Constitution to stop him. But democracy does not disappear in one dramatic moment. It weakens when exceptions become the norm. Today it may be an idea, but in the future, could it become a reality? Right now, Americans are being asked to choose between the rule of law and the rule of one man. And now a question that comes from the furthest reaches of outer space. Do aliens exist, and are they already here on Earth? Well, at the World Economic Forum in Davos, tech billionaire Elon Musk tackled issues usually reserved for science fiction conventions. The SpaceX boss said that despite thousands of satellites circling the Earth, none of them have ever had to dodge any UFOs. Here's our report.
If aliens were among us, Elon Musk insists he would know. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Musk offered an update on humanity's favorite question. Are we alone in the universe? The short answer, according to him, is rather deflating. Probably yes. During a panel discussion with BlackRock CEO Lawrence Fink, Musk laid out his case with the confidence of a man who has, quite literally, seen space up close.
We have 9,000 satellites up there, and not once have we had to maneuver around an alien spaceship. So I'm like, I don't know. Bottom line is, I think we need to assume that life and consciousness is extremely rare, and it might only be us. And if that's the case, then we need to do everything possible to ensure that the light of consciousness is not extinguished.
That's not exactly the speech you expect at Davos, a place usually reserved for cautious optimism, buzzwords, and carbon-neutral canapes. But Musk wasn't done yet. He went on to describe consciousness as a fragile candle, flickering in a vast darkness.
The image in my mind is of a tiny candle in a vast darkness, a tiny candle of consciousness that could easily go out. And that's why it's important to make life multiplanetary, such that if there is a natural disaster or a man-made disaster on Earth, that consciousness continues. That's the purpose of SpaceX.
This isn't Musk's first time playing the role of a space enthusiast. In fact, he's been remarkably consistent and stubbornly skeptical about aliens over the years. Back in 2025, during an interview with Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz, Musk cast doubt on the idea that humans would ever find alien neighbors.
I don't think we are going to find aliens. We may find the ruins of a long-dead alien civilization, that's possible. And we may find subterranean microbial life, that's possible.
In 2022, speaking at a summit hosted by the All In podcast group, Musk was even more direct about his belief. He said he had never seen any evidence of aliens. "I will definitely tell you if there are aliens, and I'll be the first to tweet about it," he said. On the Lex Fridman podcast, Musk took a longer, more philosophical detour. Civilization, he pointed out, has existed for only about 1/1,000,000th of Earth's total lifespan. If aliens had visited our planet 100,000 years ago, they wouldn't have found skyscrapers or satellites.
If you look at the history of Earth, civilization has only been around for 1/1,000,000th of Earth's existence. So if aliens have visited here, say, 100,000 years ago, they would have been like, they don't even have writing. Just hunter-gatherers, basically.
He has also floated the idea of great filters in the past. Hurdles that civilizations must overcome to survive long enough to explore space.
If you're a multi-planet species, if something were to happen, whether that was a natural catastrophe or man-made catastrophe, at least the other planet would still be around, so you don't have all the eggs in one basket.
But so far, there's been no conclusive evidence. No fossils, no microbes waving hello, no alien selfies. For now, aliens remain firmly in the realm of belief, speculation, and late-night podcasts. As for Musk, his message is clear. Until an alien spacecraft forces one of his satellites to swerve, Earth may be all we've got.
That's it on the show today, but you can join us again on Monday. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Cary Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.